In the 234th BlockTalks, we chat with Sebastien Borget, co-founder and COO of The Sandbox, to learn how gaming and the creator economy found a new home in the metaverse. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. Alright everybody, I'm here with Sebastien Borget, who's going to tell us who he is and what he does with blockchain. Sebastien, welcome to BlockTalks.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you, Mauricio. So my name is Sebastien Borget. I'm the co-founder and ambassador for The Sandbox and Sandchain, as well as the president of the Blockchain Game Alliance and the founder of a digital art gallery called Artverse in Paris. Maybe let's start with Sandbox. So if you're not familiar, Sandbox originally started as a mobile game in 2011. Back then, it was just in 2D with pixels, but with a very simple idea that anyone, just by the touch of their finger, could start creating pixelated worlds and share them in an online gallery for anyone else to discover and play around. It became a massive success. We had over 40 million downloads back in the day, 70 million player-made creation. It was sort of like 2D Minecraft on mobile before Minecraft came out to launch much later in mobile. And that success led us to step into the world of blockchain and NFTs as like being so close to creators and user-generated content. We became quite frustrated that we couldn't also like share back with those creators who contributed with their amazing participation, creation, and content to give back a portion of the revenue that we were making as a game studio back then. So we became one of the actual pioneers in the space of blockchain and NFTs. Around 2018, we rebuilt a new version of Sandbox, this time as a 3D virtual world that used voxels. And instead of just being a game, we became like a whole ecosystem with creation tools, a voxel editor called VoxEdit, a marketplace for creators to buy and sell their creation as NFTs, and a no-code game maker where people could just make games or full experiences that came out of their imagination by drag and dropping content and publishing it on a virtual land. We also were known as one of the leaders in virtual real estate, having sold land worth sometimes over $1 million next to the celebrities of like Snoop Dogg and many other brands. So we brought in total over 400 brands and became kind of like one of the leaders in the space of like metaverse, decentralized, the decentralized one. So that's where Sandbox is. Fast forward, Sandbox reached out over 8 million users that we brought to Web3, many of them for the first time. We had 400 major brands collaboration, and we launched several alpha season, which brought in both of the best of like the brands in the metaverse plus user-generated content and exposed it to hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of players to discover and enter into the metaverse. Around this week, so we are February 17th, so very soon we'll be announcing the 7th season of the Sandbox called Alpha Season 7, and we'll feature again like 30 experiences for over 10 weeks with more than 2/3 of them made by creators and cool brands on board such as Bruce Lee, Atari, and more. You're going to see a lot of gaming and a lot of cool culture from around the world. And of course, Sand rewards, Sand being the utility token of our platform. A bit around the end of the last year, we also introduced Sandchain. So Sandchain is our own layer 2 blockchain, which is like built using zk Sync. And so it's based on like the EVM stack. The main idea behind Sandchain is not to be focused only on like virtual world, metaverse, and gaming, but is really to empower any content creator, no matter which platform they are from, YouTube, Twitch, Discord, Instagram, etc., to like access and grow their community. So building up their loyalty and engagement system, leveraging points, their own creator points and other system on chain. Have access to faster payouts using like stablecoin or instant payments rather than wait for like 30, 60 days to collect their earnouts. And also like maybe eventually launch their token, their NFT collection and so on to, again, like find out new ways to monetize their audience. So tapping into like the creator economy, which is over $2.5 billion a year worth, and trying to use the technology here to support even further the creator nation. And the Blockchain Game Alliance, it's I'm not the co-founder of it, I'm the president. It started in 2018, originally with 8 members. I joined 1 year later and helped it to grow to 600 members, with this idea to educate about the use of blockchain technology within the video game industry, as a lot of like the incumbent actors within the game industry have been always kind of reluctant to new technology. So they saw like blockchain and crypto more as like a scam, a way to actually like extract value from players, or purely speculative, instead of looking at the potential benefit of the technology for the players, for the distribution, and for the developer. And we're kind of seeing the same today happening with the use of AI and generative AI within gaming. So there's always this maybe lack of knowledge or cliche that's like surrounding the use of a new technology, and a bit of friction to like why it should be used. And if you're a new game studio starting to build out with that technology, because technology has been lowering the barrier of access and allowing new entrants, there's always this part of actors who stand to look at it with the wrong understanding until later they start adopting it. So it's a repeat here, but that's been a key part of our mission. And we publish various reports on an annual basis, like our industry survey, which publish numbers about what's happening from the actual actors working in the industry around like blockchain gaming. We have also a report around like stablecoin within the blockchain games industry, like how they could help to broaden the adoption without the complexity of having your own token, for example, and so on. And recently as well, a report on like state of crypto regulation around the world.
You're an actual OG in the blockchain gaming space, which is fantastic. But personally, what is your story with crypto? How did crypto enter your life? Were you browsing the internet and the Bitcoin white paper fell onto your lap? What's the story of when crypto came in, kicking the door down?
I've been always like a geek and an early adopter of technology. So from the moment I got my first video game console, back then Super Nintendo with Super Mario World, I always got super interested on like, okay, how was it made? Like, how does it work, and how I can use it in a way, or how can I make my own games, for example. So I looked into it. I went to an engineering school in network and telecommunication because I was curious on like how things are made. I want to learn essentially to make my own. And that led me to meet my co-founder, Arthur Madrid, with whom I've been like a serial entrepreneur for the past 17 years now. And we launched several business in peer-to-peer technology, one of the first application of decentralization, in user-generated content, people uploading photo, video, and music in the cloud and sharing them with friends, family, and then mobile gaming as well as smartphone really opened the gate to our, like, again, being able to make games and apps with a very small team just from your garage, like startups, computer startup back in the 80s and 90s at the time of shareware and so also software. And so blockchain, while I think as far as I recall, around 2014, 15, when we were still into the mobile game studio, some of like the interns, like young guys, 18, 19, out of like the video game school, they were starting to talk about this thing like, oh, you can buy a computer 300 euro and you mine some stuff with it and it makes you money. And after 2 months back, you paid up your computer and you earn more. And at that time, I didn't pay attention. I was very focused still into making great games with Sandbox on mobile and so on. But around 2017, I really started to read the white paper of Bitcoin, paid more attention to it, not for the price, again, for more the technology. So I read the whole protocol and I say, I want to understand how the proof of work actually works. So I got myself an ant miner and then understand like what it's part to join a pool of miners and the hits that this machine was making and the noise and the electricity consumption, all of it, right? Then I say, oh, it's interesting. And I've been for so many years into the space of like CDN networks and data centers that I started to look at, oh, how can we operate actually a Bitcoin mining facility with like all the rack, the server and the computing power and so on. So I looked at that. And then toward 2000, 1 year later, after I looked at it and run some errands around it, I found out as well about the first blockchain game, which was CryptoKitties. And as we naturally did in the game industry, whenever there is some successful game, we try to deconstruct them. So deconstructing mean like analyzing all the reasons that makes some product or service actually successful, from the monetization mechanics or like the user experience, first time user experience, the first 10 seconds, 30 seconds, as soon as you launch it, what do you see and so on. And I really wasn't impressed by the gameplay. Honestly, like a game where you raise an animal, you feed it and you breed it. There's nothing new there. We've seen that for decades since Tamagotchi and so on. But there were a few innovations that actually really blew my mind by then. And those innovations were the fact that you were actually buying the cats, not from the developers, but from other players. So that's something really new. In mobile gaming, you rarely buy stuff from other players, only from the developer. You were buying them not on the game itself via a mobile interface and so on, but you were being taken outside on a sort of eBay of virtual cat called OpenSea, which was the first NFT marketplace back then. And you were not even paying them with a credit card, but you had to get some crypto and a wallet and install all of that and understand how it works to be able to pay other players. And at that moment, people were starting to make copycats of CryptoKitties with dogs, with dragons, with fishes, with whatever kind of cute pet you could imagine, or even monsters. But what I realized, like, wait, if instead of like trying to do those copies, what if we just enable anyone to make their own CryptoKitty? Make their own. And then that's how we figure out. But in Sandbox, people are creating content, creating games, and we are struggling to pay them. We're struggling to allow them to monetize. Here is a technology that actually could be a great fit as a solution for a problem we were facing with our actual community of players. And that's how we found the perfect match for the use of NFTs to enable content creators and game creators to monetize better their creation and to not even need us as a middleman to issue a contract or make a payment via PayPal back then, which was like okay, but still very slow and not scalable beyond like 100 creators. So the technology really magically solved us.
I love the fit coming before the solution. It's very backward. Now, when you're explaining about the Blockchain Gaming Alliance and the resistance, can you elaborate what is the biggest pushback and how you're addressing it? Because I understand the importance of informing and educating, which is what the Alliance does and does well. But I've seen more than one executive from a game studio, even in the heyday of GameFi around the pandemic, the Nintendo president speaking about bringing blockchain and NFT into the gaming world. This is not a reconciled conversation, at least not yet from my perspective. So we're in 2026. It's been 5 years since the first explosion of GameFi in the overlap of gaming and crypto. Where is the resistance now, and what are the points that can be addressed to not break the resistance, but convince that there are technologies for specific use cases? It's not everything is for everything, but there will be, as you said, a product market fit even within like 2-3 layers down into an industry where things can get super niche, but they really work well because they just solve the problem. So what is that scenario right now?
There's one thing that actually I found is a constant is like what worked 5 years ago no longer works today, and there's quite a logical evolution. So, and it's the same actually in free to play. Like anyone who launched a game company back in 2010, 11, 12 benefited from the novelty effect, the early adoption, the strong volume of install that the App Store brought in as people were buying new devices constantly and eager to install new apps. And we are not finding that anymore. So for the context, like initially blockchain and NFT appeared as a solution for developers to find alternative ways of monetizing their games. From the early pre-sale of the content, the NFTs were sold as like the Axie Infinities or the game characters or the lands before some of those games were actually being shipped live in a sort of like Kickstarter campaign. And then it evolved. That model started to to stop working from saturation of and people becoming more impatient around like we want to see the games first. But then tokens came out and tokenomics, and so many games issued their own token and used play to earn as mechanic to distribute their token to players in exchange of a form of their participation, such as like playing the game or recommending other players to participate in the game. And we saw that it worked. Network effect at scale allowed some of those games to grow way faster than we've seen ever in the industry. But in the counterpart, we've also seen how like some people came out only with the idea to extract as much value as possible from those economies in the game and without staying and participating afterwards. So people started to develop farming, bots, ways to cheat against like the game so they don't have to do the actual effort of playing. And as soon as they extracted the value from the tokens and the economy of those games, they were selling those on market for other currencies, which is a possibility that the technology allows. So there's nothing wrong about that. But when the portion of users doing it is not balanced anymore, and you have 90% extractors and 10% real players, it becomes actually counter-effective for the developer, the game, and the real players. So it's became more detrimental to it. And so we've seen a lot of interest around the use of the technology and the different ways for implementing blockchain within games, such as like NFTs for the game asset ownerships, pre-sales, or allowing the sales in secondary marketplace between players and monetizing through, for example, transaction fees and royalties. But as marketplace started to put 0% fees that cut a revenue stream, those royalty back to the creator, we've seen the wave of like games launching their own token economies, but over time it became less and less sustainable on those economies because the fully diluted market cap were way too high for the actual demand that such game could support. And there were adverse parties which didn't share the same interest as the players or the developers, such as like KOLs, influencers, investors who were selling way too fast and creating a negative impact on the economic price, and the demand wasn't sufficient to counterbalance it. And then we've seen wave now of games that use blockchain even as like for on-chain gameplay, where like all the gameplay logic and even certain parameters like like randomness, for example, is actually traced on the blockchain, so enables to prove the gameplay. And we're seeing a new wave of games now that leverage on prediction markets as well, or skill-based gameplay, where people are going to are willing to lose a certain amount of money in exchange of like maybe earning a lot more as they try to predict the outcome of a skill-based game, for example, and so on. So always a lot of novelty. But I think what has been highly underestimated by the developer is the actual percentage of users who were here for the product, for the service, for the fun that the game has to offer, and willing to pay of their own money as well, not just receive token and leave, to keep playing and engaging. So I think the blockchain game are going to keep evolving. There's some games right now that still have like 600,000, so 6 figures more active users. They are able to monetize pretty well. They found gameplay mechanics that fit their audience, and I think it's really good. And there's some games that are no longer here, and in a way, like, it's easy to criticize, but when you look at any entertainment product, whether it's a film, a book, or a game, traditional game on Steam, on mobile, the success rate of such entertainment product, cultural product, is extremely low. And that's why, like, traditionally, like, there's been much less investors. They are more risk adverse into like cultural product, because it's not as easy to repeat the recipe of success on those products. It's very hit driven. Sometimes and very often it's actually luck, whether it's you're first on the go to market, or you have identified a certain number of parameters that allow you to become a leader in a category. And that's really what we've seen has been performing well, the kind of like leader takes all, and then followers who are able to follow fast enough on that innovation trend can benefit and reap some of the wave behind. But the people who come 1 year later, they usually struggle the most, because that's how fast the industry has been evolving. And it's keep happening with those new technologies such as AI and AI agent in games and so on, actually. But so you see, it's difficult for companies who are like trying to build games, and those development cycles are not measured in days or weeks, but more in months and years, to shift a mindset rapidly, to adapt and build new monetization model. And if you add to that there is always this negative voice that's amplified by the algorithm of social network around like what people really think of something, then you get a fear. The optics are changing, and you have this fear of like, oh, I prefer not to touch it. I prefer to miss on the wave, and so that's why even the big game studios, they set up separate standalone innovation studios, the likes of the Ubisoft, the Nexon, etc., to work on parallel with a more nimble, smaller team that can apply the innovation to develop games that use blockchain and benefit for real for the players and so on. One other challenge I think that we had in the blockchain game industry in general is the lack of distribution. So I was mentioning before, in the early days of mobile gaming and even console gaming, like the platform, the console, or here the smartphone, were the one that drive new players, new users. So the cost of acquisition tends to be low, because everyone who buy a new PlayStation wants to buy games with it. Everyone who has a new smartphone is ready to install all the cool games features and try and so on. But wallets and blockchain didn't really play that role to, as soon as I get a wallet, the first thing I want to do is to find a great game to play with it and spend a little bit of my crypto to buy those NFTs and so on. The blockchain themselves, they've been focused more on generating fees and working with DeFi, and now like things like real world asset, institutional adoption, stablecoin, rather than say, every user, I will try to get them to play games, and that will increase their lifetime value, their engagement over time, and so on. So it's put in perspective, I think that's one of the challenges, specifically as like the traditional stores and gates of access to those 100 million of players, like Steam, the App Store, Google Play Store, haven't facilitated as well that adoption and stayed more on their position toward like Web 2 payment systems.
Yeah, I want to pick your brain on something because this is something that Web3 made happen. Like we over financialized the internet, right? You gave a few examples on the gaming aspect, but there are obvious examples on the prediction markets. Like people are discussing whether this is a commodity or not, but in essence, it is a form of gambling to a certain extent. So we're making things that are not necessarily as healthy, super unhealthy, and amplifying that. But one thing that is common in blockchain in general is that the tokenomics, the economics of the tokens, are usually counterintuitive to people that don't live in the world of crypto. Because you want to buy a token, call it an asset, and when you buy it, you want it to appreciate. You want it to increase in value so you have more for what you paid. But on the other hand, if that's a utility to another extent, what you're seeing is now the cost to use that utility also goes up, which disincentivizes you to use that thing, which then brings the value of the overall system down because it's harder and more expensive to use. And when the value is down, the price goes down, then you complain that the token is less valuable. But then you buy more because it's the dip. And as you buy more, it appreciates. Like this is the dynamic. And we brought that into gaming, which was supposed to be something that detaches you from this, I want to say, overly capitalistic dilemma of having to deal with value all the time. So this is true for games or blockchains, and probably one of the deterrents, because I remember the president of Nintendo said in an interview when asked if they would consider using NFTs in any other games, and the answer was, well, if it's fun. Yes. So that's kind of the answer. And I'm not from the gaming industry. I can't consider myself a gamer, but I played video games growing up, as you did with the Super Nintendo. Was one of my favorites of all time. So that is obviously something relatable. Now, you addressed a number of aspects of the industry. And one of the things that you guys did, that you just told me about launching the Sand Chain, this sounds similar to what we saw in other blockchain games in the past. And ultimately, they either discontinued the chain or they became they migrated to other chains that had a wider and a more diverse ecosystem, because being your own chain is a challenge as well. So can you walk me through the decision-making process to spin up the Sand Chain? And you can talk about the technological choices, but also why a layer 2, not a layer 1. If you can walk me through the overall thinking on that strategy, I'm super curious to learn more.
You're right. Like there's all this plentiness of choices, and you, as this asset holder, you need to make an arbitrage. Like, is it more worth it to keep it, to sell it? There's this new token coming in with potential more appreciation. So came out like more difficult choices for players and people who now are more educated toward understanding, like with financial literacy and the notion of value around what they could do with a token and whether they should hold on it or sell it. And it's hard to have like a compelling enough offer all the time. And I think as well, like this has been too much inflated, and that's why it's been hard to sustain in terms of like the tokenomics, with market caps in the range of 10 million to 100 million to billion for some games that even have launched. Like, how do you sustain such a large economy? So I think today we're seeing things called like fair launches. Market caps are in the range of the million maximum, and then they will grow with the demand, and naturally inflation will come if there is usage for it. And I think it's a much more appropriate model that hopefully will not like create such bubbles and what people felt like were dumps on tokens back in the day. But that leads me to like Sandchain. Like, why do we also think around like having our own blockchain? Well, after spending 5 years growing Sandbox to 8 million users, being one of the having quite often the top selling NFT collection in terms of avatars, in terms of lands on Polygon and Ethereum, and realizing that all that value was actually leaking into like ETH and the Matic or Polygon tokens. And we were bringing users to those chains and they were earning fees. And all of that was not really contributing back to build up value into our own token Sand, while at the same time those chains didn't bring us users in exchange. We felt like somehow that we were missing something. And we wouldn't have been thinking launching our own blockchain if the technology again wouldn't have made it so simple thanks to like roll up as a service and what zk provide. So now, like launching your own blockchain is very much commoditized. You don't need to have like hundreds of engineers and security, and smart contract developers and security auditors to build up a stack and maintain it. And it costs by itself just to build such a huge amount. And that's why like you have so few L1s today. But L2s, so L1 are like general purpose. L2s, layer 2s are more focused on certain specific niche and use cases, which are easy to deploy, doesn't cost much, allow to use your own native token for the gas fee. So participation in the network is creating value for the community of users and the tool and service you're building. Since we have users, we can bring those users to other applications and services building on our chain. So that creates the distribution and the network effect as well. And I think it's now with also all those cross chain liquidity protocol, etc. We're no longer also have to be concerned about like lack of liquidity, maybe for other use cases, which could be related more to finance, DeFi, and so on. So really using zk has allowed us to focus on like just delivering the value proposition, focusing not on gaming because there's a lot of gaming chain already, but on the creator economy, delivering a solution that right now is in testnet, but already has proven with over 200,000 signatures on chain and millions of transactions done that we are enabling content creators to drive more or loyalty and engagement on their existing channels without moving to launch a new Web3 based YouTube or TikTok and so on. And that start to add more utility for the Sand token, since Sand can be used as well as a way of payment across many other applications. And it's true that also that, like now Sand is still a top 100 cryptocurrency, even 5 years later. It's listed globally, including in the US, Japan, Korea, and Europe. And if you were to launch a token today, like it's very hard, very expensive to get on those centralized exchange. And you're always at the risk that because there is less retail demand, more institutional demand at the moment, and stablecoin and tokenization of asset that doesn't impact under the price of the underlying asset, there is a high risk that the price of your token will decrease much faster than what we used to see before. So before it used to take 3-5 years for token economies to start stabilizing. Now within sometimes less than 30 days, you see the economy of the token and the price go very sharply down and never have any upward activity because of like some new partnerships, some new announcements, some new listing and so on. So it's very hard to actually launch a new token those days that will be relevant. And that's why you have to be paired with one of these existing top 100, which is like liquid, can be exchanged for, and then like can serve as like the main medium of exchange.
You've been in the industry for a while, and you've been building games and cool things even before that. This is an industry that is relentless, right? This 24/7, the blockchains never sleep. How do you manage your mental and physical health as a worker or a founder in this industry?
So there's one thing I love about what you say is like relentless. Like the technology is constantly on. The barrier to entry for new builders, new creators is lower than ever. Now we can see people using AI agent and starting businesses and making revenue with just one person again, and like a lot of AI agents helping them. And access to capital in a traditional way has been very, very hard. Like there's less and less VC money being deployed. There's not been a lot of crypto investment. So people are actually more smarter in a way, more resourceful into finding how they can monetize, less lazy into like relying on other people's money. And that's a good thing in general for every industry. It's a good thing when there's always like this constant strength and challenge upcoming from new entrants. And it's not guaranteed that like the existing actors will still be there for the next 5 or 10 years. How do I manage that personally? I think you have to stay in the action. That's the important thing. So again, like going back to my roots, I'm passionate by technology. I love to play around, like discovering how it can be used. So I love to play with AI agent. I deployed some recently on Animoca Minds that's just launched. Of course, been using Grok, ChatGPT, and others. Vibe coding is also something quite exciting that I'm interested about, and hopefully Sandbox will be making some announcement related to that soon. It's hard to like, if you're not deep down trying to follow, I wouldn't say you are an expert because it changes every day, but try to follow, play around, test things. That's how you keep following and copying. I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years, so I know it's a marathon, there's nothing that happens overnight. You have to be resilient. You have to be prepared. Some people say that's like they are living their 5th crypto winter. I don't even know if there was a summer recently, but let's say it's, but it's all normal. Like, I don't know when, whenever into an industry, people were living for a long period of time, glorious time where everything was frivolous, etc. Maybe in the 90s, 30s, during the what we call the 30 glorious years, where like the whole world by buying like crazy. But there's always an advantage to be a first mover in a technology and understanding it well. So that's one of my recommendations. The other thing is like, even though I can work a lot of long hours, 16 hours, sometimes more a day, I try to put on the weekend at least 1 or 2 days where it's just like family time and whatever, shores, nature, walking, eating out, and so on, but no, not touching so much the technology. And again, like staying connected with younger builder, following what's happening, and being deep into it.
Keeping it fresh. I think you hinted at it, but I need to ask, if there's one thing that the industry needs to fix now to avoid working another 15, 20 years and then realizing we didn't fix that one thing, and all of a sudden we're just back to square one, what would be that one thing and why?
Build product for real users. Build things that actually like people are using, and don't overship. Just ship one thing, make sure people are using it, or stop and pivot rapidly. That's the one thing. Stop overemphasizing and building this whole storytelling about like how amazing it is to realize that you don't have actual users. So we started Sandbox with content creation tools. And those content creation tools, they were used by real artists, game creators. They enjoyed playing around with it. And that's the basic. And that's where I think like we've been stronger. So people have been in the blockchain space. There's a lot of actual solution around privacy, around tokenization of like certain category of assets, around like DeFi that are actually real problem solver. at scale, and we are starting to see that. But we've seen a lot of solutions which you no longer hear of sometimes less than a year later, and you realize like how like the storytelling was so far from reality that you understand why they are no longer here today.
I very much relate to it. I was having this conversation the other day with someone who's a trader, and they were like, yeah, because the market is like completely bonkers. We saw liquidations here, there, etc. And I'm like, I'm going to sound hypocritical, but I told this person, I said, maybe this is how we finally enter the age of utility for this technology. Because when it's too easy, as you're describing, we get lazy, we get spacious, we get accommodated. And when austerity is necessary, we start to prioritize the real things that actually move the needle. And I'm not thanking the gods of the market that we're in such a bear, but there's gotta be some silver lining in a practical sense, especially with everything that's going around the world, to focus on things that we can actually use for change and use for better. So I love that angle for sure. Do you still have friends that are not in crypto? And if you do, how do you onboard them? Do you have people calling you on Bitcoin all-time high and like, hey, I want in? Is this something you do, or are you more conservative, like, hey, do your own research, don't talk to me about it? What's the process there?
So, well, the first thing is I never talked about price. I never advise anyone to buy anything. And price is always relative. Like, 20 years ago, anyone who would have bought gold would say, well, it's going down. And now like, wow, look, it's 20x more. So it's just scale of time will tell us. Now, I also diversified my interest. Like I mentioned quickly in the introduction, I also have like a digital art gallery in Paris called Artverse. So I started to collect art from artists and use the space to promote those artists, exhibit them, run events, create a cultural hub where we have conversation from different industries, whether it's like in fashion, in tech, in gaming, in sport, in films, in music, and sometimes we have like think tanks and others. Like the space attract a very different crowd. So I also have now friends who are like artists. I have friends who are entrepreneurs. I have friends who are investors. That give me an interesting intersection of perspective between like where's value around and what's more important and how we should see the world and how to solve or not solve. I don't know, but what are the reasons of the problem we're having and so on. So, and important is like, I don't think anyone is right or wrong. It's just always perspective, but it's interesting to take all those views and just appreciate and understand the complexity of like those different opinions. Not trying to prove that one is better than another. It puts a lot of introspection around like, what's the point? Why do I have to prove I have something to say that's better than anyone? Like maybe you're listening to what I'm saying and you say, I don't believe a single word of what he's saying and he's wrong. And great for you. Like if you like to challenge and think it's wrong and you will do it totally different, or maybe I'll inspire. Some people will say I inspire others, but I need to stay humble because I don't want to think like, we all get lucky, even if like that's a marathon and there's a lot of resilience around it. But I'm still here today. We're still building. We're still trying things. We understand that things that worked 5 years ago are no longer working today, and it's fine. We need to adapt. We need to rethink and refine our approach. So that's more of like how my philosophy around like around it and like the conversation I can have with some of my friends. Yeah.
I love that you're talking about being together and exchanging ideas, because we're so remote, so much online. And it's funny that the creator of a metaverse has a preference of being with the people to engage in idea and exchanging thoughts and perspectives. It's very healthy to do that. We're about wrapping up, so people will be able to find your contacts on the show notes and on the newsletter. any particular message to the audience, Sebastien, that you would want people to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, of course. So thanks for listening till the end. And, like, don't look at the price. Like, just be excited about what technology can bring and just keep using it. Learn about it. Don't be afraid of it. The more you practice, the more it inspires, the more you can see the potential. Maybe great ideas will come out of it. Success is not in the ideas. Success is still in the execution quality of it. But you don't become successful overnight. It's by practicing and learning and making mistakes and keep staying here and standing and building again. So I'm very positive. Again, I think we are in an age where it's never been easier to get started. It's still hard to succeed, but the opportunity is available to more people than it used to be. So worth giving a try.
Seb, thank you so much. This was amazing, and hopefully I'll bump into you in Paris Blockchain Week this year.
Oh yeah, we'll be in Paris, definitely. See you soon then.
Thank you. Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDrops Podcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or ZeroX Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbun Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to Sebastien for being such a pioneer in this intersection between gaming and the blockchain. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird. LFG.